Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am Kristen Fouts. I serve the fraternity as the Director of Chapter Development and Education. Really excited that you are here for this special webinar. Some of you might join our monthly officer webinars, and this is clearly officer related, finance related, but really for the entire chapter's benefit. So as I just mentioned before I hit record, we are recording this webinar with the hope or the plan to share it out more broadly in the officer newsletter for October, so that anyone can view it. I think Shelley's going to be dropping some pretty important and useful tips when it comes to financial management and organization within your chapters. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Shelley to introduce herself and to dive in. Thanks, Shelley.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Shelley Laughlin. I'm the CFO for ZBT. I have been with ZBT now for 14 years. And I just wanted to share a little bit about my background. I had originally come from Canada and then moved to the US. So when I was employed in Canada, I worked for a large manufacturing company. But at the beginning, we were small. We only had 10 employees and 10 staff members. The company was a manufacturing company, and it was actually family owned. So the father had come from the UK and he started a welding company in his basement. So essentially, if you think about welding torches and welding consumables, he had started that in the basement of his home. And then he had two sons. So why that's important? So we were 10 employees, and then the sons essentially took over when the father grew ill and elderly. But the two sons had a vision, and that vision was commonly known with all of us. So it was to manufacture high quality welding torches and consumables. And the 10 employees, we had believed in that vision, that common vision, and we grew that small little industry to what was, when I started, probably about 3 million annually in sales, to when I left, about 60 million annually in sales. And then we had 10 employees and we grew to 250 employees. So again, why does that matter? We all had the common vision, and that was to be successful, not only with the product that we developed and sold, but just as a family. And it really and truly was family, because it started that way. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for those two sons, by the time I was getting ready to leave and move to the US, they had sold to a huge company called ITW, which is Illinois Tool Works. And if you look them up, they are about, I think, net worth about $73 billion. So they bought us up and went on to great things. But why that matters is I think of the fraternity and I think of our chapters. You're all relatively small. I think we do have some larger groups, but some of you are smaller. And I believe if you have that same vision and same common goal, you'll go on to be successful too. So I just want to go ahead and share my little slide deck I have tonight. Can you see that?
Yes.
You can see that? Okay, good. And if anybody wants to stop me too as I'm going along here, feel free to chime in. But I'm wondering, if I took a poll right now, how many chapters think that they're running a 1-star business or they're running a 5-star business? Maybe by the end of this, you'll have some thoughts on whether you're running a 1-star business or a 5-star. And I'm assuming that you all want to be 5-star. I mean, that's ZBT in general, which is a powerhouse of excellence when I think about ZBT. So what does it take to belong to a franchise? So essentially, that's what you are. Whether you realize it or not, you're running your own little business, which is a franchise of Zeta Beta Tau Fraternity, Inc. So you all have your own tax ID numbers. You all run as your own separate business. So welcome to the franchise life. So when I think of a great franchise, I live in California right now, and we have In-N-Out Burgers. I think of that as a great franchise business. One, the people are awesome, and the food is pretty awesome too. So just my personal opinion on that. So maybe you're not flipping burgers or cooking fries, but you are running a small business. So how do you want your business to be remembered? if you were to rate it on Yelp. Is it a 1-star rating today or is it a 5-star? So maybe we can help you. If you're not 1-star right now, how do you want to become a 5-star? So let's give you some information on things you can look at to be successful in your franchise. So don't let your money vanish. So here at ZBT as a CFO, every year when we start out our brand new year, prior to that, we have a budget. So we have a budget process. Maybe some of you have been involved in the budget committee, but just know annually, the first thing we do is create that functioning budget. So some of the tips I think of that are most important and where we start off when we do that budget process is, where does revenue come from? So we sit down and we decide, what are our revenue sources? For you, there'll be dues, there'll be donations, or maybe you have fundraising events. So creating that budget, we have budget templates. If you don't have one, if you belong to Greek Bill, if you're signed up with them, they also have a budgeting tool within Greek Bill that you could utilize. But the first stepping stone to developing a budget is, what is my money? What does that look like? What is your revenue sources? So then the second part of your budget would be expenses, obviously. So you don't know what you can spend until you budget your revenue, right? So prioritize your expenses. So obviously we want to get paid, which are the national dues. You probably have your local dues, more than likely. If you're running a house, think of those expenses. Not running the house, but you're managing some of the overhead expenses of a house, whether it be the leases or anything else you have to pay for managing that house. Think of the events that you're having, any social events, and then charity events. Think about all those things that you need to budget for. Again, within limitation, right? Because you only are bringing in X amount of revenue. So prioritize your expenses. Also, you want to, just like ZBT headquarters, we have the oh no fund, which is, oh my gosh, what about these overhead expenses we didn't expect? So make sure you're having a savings account. If you don't already have one, set that up. Set aside some sort of funds in an emergency. Maybe you have an unexpected expense that you have a brother that maybe wants to join ZBT and he can't afford it right now. Things like that. We used to have something called here Build a Brick Fund, where our chapters would set aside funds every year in the event that they could capitalize on a house if they didn't have one. So things like that. Always make sure that you have a rainy day fund. I don't know if you can chat here. I think you can all chat. Is somebody want to share anything? What was your wildest expense that you had, or an unexpected expense that you weren't aware of and you didn't budget for? Anybody want to share anything like that? Nobody? Nobody had any weird expenses? One thing I can share with one of our groups, or maybe it's happened to several of our groups over the years, that they didn't expect. For instance, I had a group last year that had bought t-shirts from a t-shirt company that they thought was reputable. They had paid for these t-shirts. Unfortunately, they were never delivered. This company just ghosted them and went MIA. So think about the contracts that you might have out there. So you don't end up having an unexpected cash outlay or an expense that you thought these t-shirts were coming in. For example, they took the money and ran. If you have any contracts that you want us to look over at any point, we'd be glad to do that. We're here to help. So what's the next thing? So after I've done my fancy budget and it's all been approved, the year begins. So as you know, all of our chapters have received their invoices for their annual dues. So get paid. I've sent out those invoices. You must be well aware by now that they are due within 30 days. If not, you've set up a payment plan with us and you honor those. Same with the new initiates. So we'll be invoicing for those whenever those happen. Just know that those invoices are due within 72 hours. So then internally, what do you do for tracking? How do you track what you collect from your brothers? So best practices with your brothers, set clear dues deadlines. If you're working with us within the 30 days, obviously you should have done that already. If you have a payment plan, you'll be setting deadlines for all of those brothers when to pay and to match your payment plan to us. Send reminders. I know it's not fun being the collector, but send out reminders. You all have, I'm sure, calendars where you can set reminders to contact those brothers. If you have your chapter meetings, send those reminders to those brothers that they still need to pay their dues. Use your invoicing software. So I think 50% of our groups are on GreekBill. If you don't have GreekBill, maybe you have something like a simple QuickBooks Online software to track your invoicing and your collections, maybe your payables too, if you're paying out to your vendors. Spreadsheets, I've seen some pretty fancy spreadsheets out there of tracking all the dues from the brothers. So collections, I mentioned that. How do you avoid becoming a debt collector? So I went to school for a long time. I didn't know I was going to be the collection agent too at ZBT, but that's part of my job. Um, I, I'll be honest, I don't enjoy having to do that, but that is part of the job. Unfortunately, when people fail to pay on time or pay properly or leave the fraternity without paying, I could just name off all kinds of scenarios. But for you, you want to set proactive methods for getting your dues. So when I think of proactive methods immediately off the top of my head, when you're initiating a new brother, are you fully disclosing exactly what it costs them today? For instance, that new initiate fee, it's $503. By the way, that's due within 72 hours. Are you communicating that to the new initiates? I hope so. Just be transparent with what it costs to belong to this fraternity. And that goes for the returning brother fees that we charge annually as well. Though right now, those are 460. Really important to be proactive and let those brothers know upfront what it's going to cost them over the years that they belong to ZBT as an active undergraduate. So I've heard of some chapters creating incentives for getting payment. If you want to offer a discount, that's fine. Our fees are not discounted, but if you want to offer some sort of discount because maybe you have savings set aside that you can do that in that situation. I've heard of groups giving swag for on-time payers. So think outside of the box, whatever it takes to get them to pay on time. So again, what are the 5-star collection tips? Be clear, be consistent, be transparent. In my job, I'm very transparent with all of our financials. Always be professional when you're having to ask for money. Again, collections is not fun, but we want to work with our brothers in any way we can and ensure that the dues are being paid on time. Offer payment plans, but with deadlines. So internally, we offer payment plans for our returning brother fees. You've received those. Every single chapter received a copy of our payment plan. There's still time, by the way, if you need a payment plan, be happy to work with you and set that up. And then continuing on with collections, as you know, we are partnered with GreekBill. If our groups have debt at May 31st at year end, which is our year end, our groups are mandated to be on GreekBill. Why is that important? They can manage your finances very effectively. They can also assist with budgeting, like I had mentioned before. It's super easy to use. I'm not tech savvy, but I have been using GreekBill on the admin side of things. From what I can tell, it's very user friendly. The nice thing about GreekBill is it provides historical and transparent information. So what does that mean? When you leave as the current finance director, it's easily transferred to the next finance director. And you have all of your membership information in there. You have everything that you've invoiced your brother for, whether it be for the national dues or local dues. And then you can see everything that they have paid or they haven't paid. And another neat function of GreekBill is if they do have debt when they leave, you can automatically send that to the collection agency. We use a company by the name of Fairway Capital. By the way, I would be adding on a 30% surcharge in the event you must put them into collections for unfortunate reasons. But we can track everything that way if you're within the GreekBill system. Another feature about GreekBill that I really like is because it's tracking all of your revenue and if you're using it for the expense side too, which I'm assuming you are, you can follow your 990, which is easily done within the Greek bill system. So lots of advantages to using Greek bill. So payments, keep it smooth. So I think of the ways of accepting payments. Stick to our formal payment methods. Why is that important? For instance, we have found out a lot of our groups are using the peer-to-peer payment apps like Venmo and Cash App. So there is not a lot of control, and you're violating the terms of, let's say you signed up for Venmo. There is not a nonprofit platform for Venmo. There is a business platform only. With the IRS, the last I understood is if you're taking in payments and dues, that sort of thing through Venmo, over $600, you can become personally liable for paying taxes on the money that you're collecting. But I had just sent out a notice last week to all of our groups that we prohibit these. And I need to be made aware if somebody's asking you to use Venmo. We have so many other options available, and we want you to be safe and not have any tax repercussions or any liability repercussions by using these cash apps. Never accept cash. So obviously, cash is not an acceptable form of payment. I can't prove that I paid you cash. Cash goes easily missing. So don't accept cash. Accept checks. That is one thing that is acceptable through ZBT as well. Use bank transfers or payment platforms like GreekBill again, or chapter approved systems. So this year you'll see, and you probably noticed on your returning brother invoice, that we are now charging what are known as Stripe fees. They are credit card fees. So you can avoid having to pay those from your chapter by using an ACH, which is essentially I can provide our banking information and you can direct or deposit into our bank account from your bank account. So there are no fees involved in that. Or simply just write a check and send it to our HQ in Carmel, Indiana. But if all else, I expect you to have some formal system with proper documentation for all of your transactions. You don't want to ever be accused of having money going missing. So this is really protecting you. And consistency is key. Automate when possible. So it makes it easy for the next finance director, if he steps into your shoes, that everything is as it should be. And you've left a really clean audit trail for them to track every single brother, what they paid and what they haven't paid. If you're having to pay vendors, those sorts of things. So automate as much as possible. So, I touched a little bit on internal controls, why you can't wing it. ZBT here at our HQ, we are heavily audited in many areas, but one of them, we do have a major external audit annually. So we make sure that we are following policies and procedures, not just as implemented by ZBT, but also by the IRS. So obviously we need to follow IRS policies and procedures to protect ZBT. So I have to have internal controls in place. So things that you think about internal controls, for instance, I myself in 14 years have never been able to write a check, or I cannot do a bank transfer that is channeled upwards, and that protects me. So internal controls would limit that. I should never be able to enter an invoice and then write a check. That's just not a good example of having internal controls. So if you are writing checks, have somebody look over your back always. Make sure you could have 2 officers signing your checks. You could have an advisor signing your checks, but I'd always have somebody looking over your shoulder. Perform regular audits if that looks like, your bank reconciliation. Have your president approve your bank statement monthly so he can see everything that's going in, everything that's going out. Again, that just protects you too. So that's a good example of an internal control. So always be transparent, share your budget with your chapter, share your revenue, your expenses with your chapter. I'm assuming you're having chapter meetings and you're discussing those sorts of things, maybe even where you are with your budget. That's a good policy to have. Again, transparency is key, and it's a part of internal controls. And again, like I had put there, policies and procedures, I have a lot of them. So you wouldn't run a 5-star restaurant without a game plan. And we certainly run ZBT that way with a game plan. So I had touched with Greek Bell on the tax returns. Every single one of our chapters, yours included, has to file an annual tax return. Something as simple as a Form 990N. So those are organizations with gross receipts less than 50,000, which are a lot of our entities. Why is that important? If you do not file within 3 years, 3 consecutive years, you will lose your tax exempt status. So you are federally tax exempt. We have a group tax exemption from that headquarters. And then you being one of our entities or one of our franchises, one of our small businesses, you have your own tax identification number, and we need you to keep that in good standing. That is part of your responsibility. I can take this offline if you'd like to have further conversations on these, but they must be filed annually. And just for clarification, this is for federal tax exemption only. Some of our chapters have created their own corporation within their state. So you would need that in the event you wanted to apply for state tax exemption. So let's say, vendors, those sorts of things where you don't want to pay the state tax. But again, that's a whole other different thing than what I'm talking about today for the 990s. Some of the 990s can be much more complicated. Again, that's another advantage of having Greek Bill and the ability to file your 990 on time. What's on time? So it's essentially 5 months and 15 days after your year end. So if your chapter's year end is December 31st, that means you need to file it by May 15th of the following year. If you do lose your tax exempt status, you could put the chapter in a situation where they have to file with perhaps a CPA, because they have to go back for the 3 last years and determine what your revenue and expenses were. That could relatively cost upwards of $2,500 in possible tax and penalties. So we want to avoid that. Again, if you have any questions, I'm free to talk about this offline anytime. So what's in it for you? So you ran a 5-star franchise, I'm assuming, right? So this looks great on a resume. You ran a small business, you managed the finances, you budgeted smart, you managed payables if you paid off vendors, receivables, i.e. collections and tax returns. So you essentially are running a small business. And I always look at it and I say to our brothers, do you realize you're running a small business, and this looks amazing on a resume? And I'm really, really hoping that you keep clean records and you help the incoming finance director. Just don't lay on top of them a bunch of papers here. Good luck with this. We expect you're running this as a 5-star franchise, and you wouldn't do something like that for the next brother. So again, how would you rate your franchise or your small business or your chapter today? Is it a 1-star or is it a 5-star chapter? So I'm open to any questions now. Kristen, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, sorry, let me turn my video back on. I was just going to post a few things in the chat. So Shelley was talking about, being transparent with potential new brothers, and certainly with new brothers before they initiate, about the fees and dues and whatnot. We created a sort of a template informational sheet for the Recruitment University course that we just posted in Plaid. That is something that chapter can fill out with their dues information, as well as other sort of obligations and responsibilities for membership. So when is your chapter meeting? About how many hours a week, should a new brother, potentially need to, be at the house for various meetings and events and that sort of thing. So just trying to be as upfront and transparent as possible. We want brothers to, or, potential brothers to make that decision sort of eyes wide open. And certainly finances can be a huge, barrier for some students. We want for them to have that in mind. I was also just going to kind of share some information about SOE. A lot of the things that Shelley's talked about tonight, whether it's reviewing the budget, having an advisor review the budget, having a dues collection plan, those are all elements of the Standards of Excellence program. So If your chapter already participates in SOE, you know that and you know how important those pieces are. If you don't and you do those things, you're already doing it. So submit that information and you can get credit towards SOE for that. So those are normal sort of operations of the chapter that are built into SOE. So so I was just going to kind of share those two things in there. Ricky and John, I know you're you're muted and cameras off, but certainly anything that you might want to add, feel free to jump in.
I'm just upset Shelly used In-N-Out instead of Chick-fil-A, but I'm going to forgive her for that. So
Okay, well, you tell me what your 5-star franchise would be.
Chick-fil-A is the ZBT standard.
I put
ZBT and
Chick-fil-A on there.
Chick-fil-A are synonymous. No, but you were talking about, I wasn't watching. I'm out running.
I was
I'm
talking
sorry. I
about
was
In-N-Out.
listening.
Well, you know, just
Uh-huh.
because it was in
I heard
California,
you. I
but
heard you.
you know, anybody who's been out here, they know In-N-Out.
Oh, I love In-N-Out, but you know, ZBT synonymous with gentlemen. ZBT synonymous with Chick-fil-A, not beef. Slim chicken.
There's an incentive for brothers to pay. Hey, you know, we'll give you a Chick-fil-A gift certificate.
Oh boy.
Absolutely, a full platter of mac and cheese.
And it's good for only Sundays.
Love it. No, I don't have anything else to add. Kristen, great job, Shelly and Kristen.
Anytime. We're all here for you guys, so happy to help.
Yeah. I will actually add that resource. I will link it in the October officer newsletter. For those of you who are on tonight, I can email it to you right away just so that you have access to it. But again, Shelly shared her email address in the chat. Feel free to reach out to her. She is truly an expert when it comes to ZBT finances, other aspects of accounting and finance for sure, but she's been on staff, you know, through many changes, policy changes, you know, changes in our practice. So she's just a great resource and always willing to help. So we appreciate you all being here. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Shelly. Otherwise, we will share this back out in that newsletter. But again, appreciate you. Good luck with the rest of your fall semester if you're already back on campus, and just let us know how we can be helpful. All right. Thank you so much, Shelly.
Thank you.
Good night.
Night.
Have a good night, everyone.